My name is Don Kroesch. I fly out of the Chicago Glider Club. I joined the SSA in 1967. When they talk about youth involvement, I was a youth. Started flying gliders in '69. I got my private pilot certificate, single engine land and glider in 1972. I've been an A&P for 50 years. I have a note here that makes me sound old. Maybe because I am. But I've only been a tow pilot for 3 years, so maybe that makes me sound a little younger. And, I am a contest pilot, and sometimes I'm successful. I have both won regionals and placed absolutely last, so I try to be humble, and it's not hard with the people that know me know I should be humble. So I fly a Genesis 2, which puts me in a very small club. I would like a show of hands so that I know the audience that I'm talking to. And the first question is, how many have no experience with Condor Flight Simulator? Okay, that's interesting. How many have a little or some experience with Condor? Okay. How many belong to a club that uses Condor in its training program? Okay. Has anyone trained with Scott Manley? Okay, quit smiling. Scott and I go back a ways. Scott and I are now the co-chairmans of the brand spanking new SSA Simulator Training Committee. And the good news is that although Scott and I disagree about a few things, I'm going to be able to make him do 95% of the work. So I had offered him speaking time, even though this session had my name on it, but he unfortunately is not able to be with us today. I will credit him for things later in the program. The last question I have written down here, is there anyone who hasn't heard that the SSA has a matching funds program that can provide a club with up to $2,500 for the purchase of a sit-in cockpit simulator? Talk to me. That's being discussed at the highest levels. So there's contact information for me. Get in touch, and we'll see what we can do. Okay. It gets checked daily, but we'll get to that later. So I have kind of come to Condor late in life. This is my desk at home, and you can see it's got some nice controls on it, and there's Condor on the main screen. And I had Condor 1, I had Condor 2, and anytime I would turn it on, I would spend 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes, and decide it was a pretty mediocre video game. Turn it off and do something else. Our experience at the club level was similar. The Chicago Glider Club, we have 80 members, we have probably a dozen instructors. There's the setup sitting on the desk at the Chicago Glider Club for at least a decade. And in that decade, there were no minutes, 0 minutes of instruction done with Condor. So you can see why maybe I wasn't too excited about Condor from the experience that I had personally had. That changed in December a couple years ago when one of our club members, a guy named David Strasberg, had purchased a simulator so that he could transition into ASK-21s. He was a TBM pilot, so his insurance company would insist that every year he took simulator training. He was a strong believer in simulators. He bought a Mach 0.1, a simulator that's still available, had it in his downtown Chicago office so he could use it to learn how to fly an ASK-21. He got to the point where he thought the transition was going to be easy, came out to the club, took a little bit of real instruction, soloed, and did fine, and decided he no longer needed the simulator. So he offered to donate it to the club, and Mike Shackman and I, we went to sit in it and fly it, and oh gee, what a difference it made. So along with a list of 8 requirements that he insisted the club do before we took possession of it, and we promised we'd do it, we had a simulator. And it first got put together in my basement because one of the stipulations was we had a safe place where we could lock it up and make sure it was properly supervised when anyone used it. And we hadn't built that place yet, so it ended up in my basement with an invitation for all of the instructors and members to come and fly at my basement. So that was our first simulator, and our second experience, or maybe my second experience with simulators, was at the Reno convention a year and a half ago or more, and they had two just soaring simulators there. After having used the simulator with a bunch of instructors who had avoided the joystick on the desk, the SSA decided that it was serious enough for consideration that clubs should have these things, and so that's when the idea for the matching grant thing came around. This is part of a page that appeared in the front inside cover of Soaring magazine pretty much all of last year. Then they got a paid advertiser and I lost my spot. But if anybody needs this and doesn't want to look through last year's Soaring magazines, I have a bunch of copies of the application as to how a club can qualify for getting some funds. We've had 20 clubs so far that have taken advantage of this. We still have some money left. We would like lots more clubs to apply. The rules are pretty simple. I won't bother to read them. I'll push the button. Hey, see that? I could do that myself. So, okay, I was talking about Reno. We went to Reno, and the gentleman who had donated the first simulator to us had warned us that it was not as robust as he would like, and that's why he wanted it locked away. He didn't want people to be able to get near it unless there was somebody there to slap them if they broke it. So I was interested to see the Just Soaring simulators that I'd seen online. They were getting good reviews. There were some YouTube videos. So I went to Reno specifically to look at a Just Soaring simulator. This photograph on the left shows the first iteration of the Soaring Society of America simulator. On the right is a simulator that had been built at the St. Louis Club by Jim St. Clair years before there were commercially available simulators. And he did a very nice job, and I learned several things at St. Louis last year at the junior cross-country camp. So obviously there are 3 large monitors on the St. Louis Club simulator. We have one very nice gaming monitor on the Soaring Society of America simulator. You'll also notice that there are wires coming out of the young man's head, which are, that's a head tracker. And if you're not familiar with head trackers, so you can still be looking at the screen in front of you, and if you raise your head a little bit, still being able to keep your eyes focused on the screen, the whole thing will pan up. Same thing to the left or the right or the down. And I had gotten pretty used to using that. Of course, I'd been doing it in my basement when nobody was looking. But it did take a substantial amount of setup every time you wanted to use it to make sure the thing was working exactly the way you wanted. So some of the young men at this youth camp were familiar with it and able to use it without any trouble. I wanted to show how well it worked to our chairman, and as usual, when you want something to work really badly, it doesn't work very well at all. And it was at that time it was decided that in a group setting where you're putting people in and out of a simulator, that trying to adjust the head tracker and getting it to work properly for each individual was kind of a non-starter. So we'd seen these 43-inch monitors. Our simulator, which we'll see again in a minute or two, has 40-inch monitors because the only advantage to the 43s is they're further away from you. You get the same kind of effect with the 40-inch television, and it can be closer to you, more compact. A lot of clubs have real issues as to where they're going to put this thing. Hopefully you've seen it on the convention floor. One more show of hands. Who has seen it on the convention floor? Who hasn't seen it on the convention floor? Please come by, because it's a lot of fun. I'll be there at 10 o'clock and happy to answer all questions and let you fly it. Right in the center, right next to the welcome desk, the SSA welcome desk. So St. Louis was a good thing. Oh, the other thing I'd like you to notice in this is how little sky you see on the SSA simulator and how much more landscape and sky you see on the 3 televisions. Gaming monitors seem to be remaining short, but keep getting wider and wider. That doesn't work real well for us because we like to see the sky and we like to see where the runway is. So the televisions work very well. 3 40-inch televisions, all 3 of them together are like $450. So 3 televisions is cheaper than 1 monitor. See, I remembered which button. So the Just Soaring simulator that I was so enamored with seeing, one of the reasons was because it wasn't fragile. It was quite robust, mainly because they use these very stiff aluminum extrusions. 80/20 is available all over the world. Very easy to work with, very easy to add on things. Again, this is my basement. I meant to Photoshop all the nonsense out of the back, but obviously I didn't get around to that. But you can see how much sky and how much ground you can see. The other thing that's new in this picture is the little throttle quadrant thing over on the left-hand side. The standard simulator, the Just Soaring simulator, comes with push buttons on the stick. They want you to push a button a number of times to trim the glider. And I found that unacceptable. And so I now have a lever that you can push or pull, and it acts much more like a real glider. Let's see what else we have in store for us here. We've seen that photo before. 2 years ago, over 300 flights were made in that simulator without any failures. Let's see, I started talking about Reno and then I interrupted myself. At Reno, I got to sit in 2 Just Soaring simulators and again was impressed by the robustness, and they also had, one of the 2 had a 3 monitor setup because the Just Soaring folks sold that as a very attractively priced add-on. But the thing I discovered was they really was only big enough for monitors, not televisions. And so with 3 reasonably sized monitors, it would put all 3 of them in front of you to the point where you could see your wingtips in your peripheral vision without turning your head. I found that to be unacceptable. And I may have mentioned that by the end of the second day at the Reno convention, both of the things were broken. I think I did mention that. Sorry. I've mentioned it again because it's an important fact. I still recommend starting with a Just Soaring simulator to clubs, and most of them are willing to accept that idea. I also warn them that they're going to be replacing some of the controls, if not immediately, then someday. I've been fortunate that some of them have come by the Chicago Glider Club and flown our simulator, which is set up exactly the same way. And then they report back that they've set it up exactly the same way. I know the last 3 clubs that have taken advantage of the matching funds grant have immediately gone to this setup. Okay, so this picture also doesn't quite do it justice because the camera is back behind the seat rather than giving you the exact look. But you can see the scope. This is the Northern Illinois landscape, and you can get landscapes for almost any club area if you ask the folks in Harris Hills to make it for you. Soaringtools.com. Anyway, so we get a surround look, and shame on me because this photograph shows both the wingtips. Come and see the simulator. You can't see both wingtips without moving your head. This is in the room we built for it. The room also includes an angled wall because we built it out into our hangar and we still needed to get the same number of gliders and tow planes out there. So this is stuffed in the one end of our instructional room. Behind this is a desk with a whiteboard and a big screen TV, and so it's good for instruction. In the olden days, the instructors and the students would be out in the main area, and all the rest of us would be eating lunch and yammering, and so a room where they can close the door and it's quiet works much better for instruction. Let's see what else we got. Okay, so I'm going to try to buzz through things I did to modify the stock simulator to make it more robust and more usable. On the left is just simple gussets. The people who build these things tell you, oh, you don't want to grab on anything up there, no monitor, none of the monitor stands because it's too flimsy, and that's only because of the way it's mounted. If you add very inexpensive aluminum gussets, it becomes very rigid, and not only can you grab it, but you can build a specific handle for grabbing onto. We now have a Mark II version of that if you come see our simulator on the convention floor, you will notice that's been updated and upgraded. The 3 televisions also needed outboard supports for the weight of the larger 3 televisions. Very simple to make an adjustment to get them in the right spot. Nothing real exciting there other than I had to modify their 3 monitor kit to make it a 3 television kit. Since those kits are no longer available, that doesn't make much difference. This is very important, I think. The stick that came with the simulator, you can see the notch in the seat. So that's where they put the stick. And then it was very short. The bottom of the handle was right there at the top of the seat, incredibly close to your zipper. My zipper doesn't like things being incredibly close to it. Their stick was just a gaming stick, and so the elevator movement was like this. It also felt like it had a hard rubber donut in it, so if you pulled it back a little bit, that was okay. If you wanted to pull it back a lot, it felt like that donut was fighting you. And when you sat down and caught it on your pant leg and tried to sit down, it would break. And that was a very common failure point. That's what took both of them out of action at Reno. And so for lots of reasons, their stick had to go. And this is an easily purchased stick here in this country. There are dozens of places that sell them. It's called a Warthog because apparently the handle itself is a duplicate of what they use in A10 Warthogs. I would have been perfectly happy to use something with less buttons, but this was readily available. It also has an extension on it so that the pivot length and the travel in each direction matches a real ASK-21. I later measured an AS-33 and an ASH-31, and That's what Schleicher uses in all of their gliders, that similar travel on the stick. The rudder pedals were upgraded too. Their rudder pedals were better than their sticks, but they were wired together. So if I kept their rudder pedals on there, I was going to have to duct tape the stick to something, and I thought that was inappropriate. So for a couple $100, I added a set of rudder pedals that were physically an upgrade as well as being easier to handle electronically. The throttle quadrant, we talked about that. I painted one of the knobs green to match what an ASK21 has for a trim lever, and it's proven very useful otherwise. The yellow painted lever substituted for the tow release when I had a tow release failure. The little bitty switch in there, and if you pull hard on the release like you would in a real glider, you break the switch. So I can now program that to the yellow handle. At the moment, my tow release switch is working just fine. The blue one can be a spoiler handle or pretty much anything else you want to program it for. The original shelf they sent was the silver thing on the left there. It was big enough to put my mouse and my computer keyboard on and then immediately knock them off with my elbow. So the larger shelf that you see on the right was in response to that I hated having to pick it up off the floor. There's my buddy Jim Davis with his elbow on there, knocking nothing off with his hand on the mouse. There's also a small keypad there that Paul Remedy sells for a ridiculously low $30, and it does have some very nice functions that help out when you're flying Condor. On the right, there's some hardware there. There's that 3M film wrap that makes the shelf look like it's carbon fiber. It's just a hunk of leftover aluminum I had in the basement. Okay, so this is where my presentation goes off the rails because 2 weeks ago I was told there were no longer just soaring simulators. So I had to figure out what else I could be suggesting. Well, the Mach 0.1 is still available. Gliderbooks.com, Russell Holtz, he makes very good training programs. I've talked to Russell several times, and I once told him his simulators were fragile, and the conversation went downhill from there. But I've talked to a number of clubs that have them or people that have them, and the word that comes up most often is fragile. Some people have figured out a more polite way to say that, like not particularly robust, but anyway. That's still available and it's reasonably priced. I then spent a day first just all nervous that I was going to have to figure out how to duplicate all the structure and tell people, well, you can duplicate the structure if you want to spend days doing it. And then I remembered that Google was my friend, and very shortly figured out there were 3 places that looked like they had satisfactory cockpits to sit in that would then allow the addition of the controls that we had modified this to anyway. On the SSA simulator down there, and the last few that have been purchased by clubs, they've used my parts list as to how to build a triple TV stand. And most clubs are very happy with the idea of 3 inexpensive televisions. We had a club out east earlier this year that when they sent me the receipts so that I could arrange for them to get their money from the SSA, they had a $900 gaming monitor on there. And I shrugged my shoulders and said, well, if that's what they want to do, that's okay by me. I think it's wrong for a bunch of reasons that I've said, but again, and the other thing I won't do is I won't recommend a computer, because at every club in this country, there are people who fancy themselves as knowing much more about computers than I do. And I gotta tell you, they're right. So the guy who's going to be taking care of their computer, I want him to have picked it so that any problems he has, that's on him, not on me. But anyway, so I've established that there are other cockpits available. There are other seemingly very robust 3-monitor stands that are big enough to do the job. I still like the 40-inch TVs that they're on sale now for $139.99, at least 2 weeks ago. I've had club members spend as little as $99 a piece for them and as much as $189. So all from the same source.
Could you just say a word about, not about what computer to buy, but about the need for a relatively fast video card?
Yes. Okay, so the one thing I do warn against is some people say they want to buy laptops to do this. What he said. Because any flight simulation program is going to be more and more and more load on the graphics card. And so, although Condor gives you ways to dumb down the scenery so that it's a little bit less demanding of the graphics card, having a full-size computer that you can upgrade if necessary to a higher quality graphics card, I think that's very important. And most of the clubs go, oh, that's a good idea. And if they choose not to, again, I don't get involved with the computer choice as much. The 3 screens allow you not to have to pan around at all. You know, once you've found the airport and you've set yourself up on downwind, I mean, you can see it. It's right there. You turn your head and, oop, there's the runway. You don't have to mess with the view at all. The view is always useful. There are some occasions, if you do a really steep turn to final, there's a couple instances where, you know, you lose sight of the runway. But by the time you're turning final, you kind of know where the runway is anyway. So, and please, if you haven't tried flying the simulator, I'm going to be there all day, and I would love to show it to everybody because I think it provides a very compelling instructional aid. And okay, so when I thought I had to find some other simulator, the one missing piece in my mind was a realistic spoiler control. And I know that I can program the one over there on the right side. I can program that blue handle or any handle I want to be a spoiler. But then you gotta, you grab at your fingers and it doesn't seem realistic enough to me. So I'd looked at all kinds of other things. Handbrakes on drifting cars, that might work. They pivot, but so does the spoiler handle on the Mach 0.1, and I found that okay to use. And then I found this thing on the left that I haven't tried, so I can't recommend it yet, but someday I'm going to try it because it looks really nifty because it's got spoilers, flaps, and the trim built into it. So if we can't keep the just soaring simulators working properly, someday I'm going to try that one. A little pricey, comes from Germany. Hope they did a nice job building it. The other changes that have happened, the SSA website that's being redesigned at the moment is going to have a section for simulator training, mostly focused on Condor. There should be a forum so people can exchange ideas. I'm also hoping to see a section that is specifically, show us your simulator. A couple photographs and a description, and that way we can learn from each other as to what works. Because there is going to be an end to these just soaring simulators, 12 more at the most, and at which time it will be homebrewed simulators, which there are many of them out there, or it will be trying stuff that we buy offline that they think they're building for jet fighter pilots, but they're building them for us glider pilots as well. And the other thing that is brand new as of day before yesterday is that the offer to match funds to clubs extends past the original, we want you to have a sit-in simulator. If clubs have condor needs outside the simulator, specifically the thing that started the conversation was training material. Russell Holtz, the builder of the Mach 0.1 simulator, has a very effective training program that used to start out with just a $100 add-on to the Condor simulator and books. He has a couple books that he recommends with that. I just found out this morning that he also has a online webinar kind of training course as well. And learned about that from our instructors back at the Chicago Glider Club. The same guys who wouldn't use it when it was sitting on the desk. I had, I think, at least 3 of them emailing as to how impressive the Holtz program was to start with, and how it was going to relieve a lot of their time and it would make them much more effective instructors. So, and at the moment, the online stuff is available to individuals. You pay a fee, you have it available to one individual for a year. I'm planning on calling Russell on Monday and tell him about our new club initiative and see if there isn't a way that he can figure out a pricing schedule for clubs who are going to do, I don't know, 3 or 4 or 5 students a year, and hope he's receptive to that. Hope he doesn't remember I'm the guy who called his simulator fragile. Maybe I should change my name. You want to call him Mike? Okay. All right, so I think I've said, oh, look at that. I've said most of what I want to say. I would like to field questions. I'm willing to take comments. And people who have stories, hopefully success stories, I want to hear those too. I saw your hand first.
Earlier you said there was a company, sorry, you said here earlier there was a company called SoaringTips.com that looked up a
Soaring Tools. Soaring Tools. And they don't do it in the soaring season, but now that we're getting late into the fall, they'll probably be willing to talk to you again.
So how does it feel that we're developing the area you want them to, your program to make footage, we need to put it on a
What?
flash drive and then you.
I think they can email it to you. Okay, so the question is, I had mentioned that SoaringTools.com will make landscapes for local areas that aren't covered in the default stuff. And we have it for the Northern Illinois area, and what they've done for us is that they took a Google Earth photograph of a large section of Northern Illinois, and then there are 3 glider clubs surrounding Chicago, and they fancy those up a little bit. At the Chicago Glider Club, we have a trees issue at the end of the runway, so they put some trees there. We have a windsock and not much else. And so it's a little bit harder to figure out exactly where to land, at what altitude. The other interesting thing is that if you're 3,000 or 4,000 feet, it looks really realistic, just like Google Earth does. And as you get close to the ground, all the hangars pancake down into nothing. Now, it doesn't have to be that way. You can put hangars, clubhouses, farmhouses, trees. You can add that to these landscapes. I thought I would do that, and then I looked up the guide as to how to do it. It was 154 pages long. I'm going to send them a request with what I would like to see and hope that they do it for us. But it's free. Nobody can bitch about the prices if it's free. So
send them pictures for your site, your club, you know, whatever, and it comes, it's unbelievable. It comes back.
Okay,
So accurate, yeah.
they've done that for you? Which area?
Repeat the question.
Jackson, and it's a lot more fun, and you can practice. I practice at all the airports within 100 miles, so I
Yep.
can practice my cross-country style in the weather.
Yep.
One thing, I'm addicted to VR goggles for my personal use and everything.
Yeah.
And that's what really made a difference, is
Yep.
doing that. And then before I transition to another aircraft glider, I always do that first, you know, do 50 takeoffs or whatever.
Yep.
And the transition is just like perfect.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay. Yep. So thanks for bringing up those points, because if I'd been reading my notes, I would have remembered I was supposed to do a longer progression as to how we got to the 3 monitors. Now, I talked about the head tracker not working. In our club, the VR goggles also don't work for instruction. And there are people that love them, and there are people that do not. I'm somewhere slightly in between the two, although I'm a firm believer in the triple TVs for instruction. I've flown cross country with the VR, and if you're flying cross country, it is easier to do this, to see the bottom of a cloud. We had one instructor that after flying it with the screens, I put him in the VR goggles, and on tow, he was about 500 feet in the air when he shouts to me, "I'm gonna throw up." I told him to take off the goggles, because if he threw up, he would be cleaning it up. And we got along much better after that. And there was also, if you didn't hear it, there was also a testimonial that the soaring tool guys do a great job. And it clearly makes it easier if you have, if they've gone so far as to give you the manufactured runway rather than just the photograph. That helps. And just seeing the buildings that you're going past on final, that helps too. So
it's very, very useful. Before I do a cross country or have something, you know, you can knowledge weather, you know, you can
Yep.
also on Microsoft Marketplace, you can do it, you know, you got more control over the weather, you can do actual weather in there. But like, I'm looking for all the land out spots and things like that.
Yep.
And it's very
yeah.
You took pictures of your airport and they.
Hey, down in Charlotte,
Yeah.
why don't you hand the microphone to the speaker?
Okay.
Good morning. My name is Serge Valade, and I fly out of Toronto, and we had a club at the university. And I just want to reinforce what Don was saying about the VR goggles. So we had these university students there in the aerospace engineering. They wanted VRs. We ended up spending $800 on them, and we had the same experience as we had with the ed trackers. So we had to calibrate them every time our students came in. They had to be charged with the battery, and after probably about 3 months of trying them, it became, they broke, and it just impeded the ability. So given a choice between in a student environment, I would highly recommend the 3-screen versus the VR. It's more practical. Students don't fly with VR goggles and a glider, and you'll save money.
Don, I just wanted to ask you why the VKT rudder pedals. Did you look at Thrustmaster or anything else? Was there a specific reason?
The Just Soaring the Simulator rudder pedals were okay, better than the stick. But the main reason I got rid of them was because I was going to have to leave the stick hooked up because they're wired together. And I thought about duct taping it to the structure. But again, the idea of having as close to 100% reliability as I could get, that stuck in my head. The VKBs also are adjustable as to how the center feels and how much force it takes to move them. So they're slightly higher quality, and I believe that they might be more robust for me. So that's why they ended up on there. Okay, I remember your hand.
In watching the Condor yesterday with somebody at the controls, it appears to me you solved the lead and lag time in matching controls. And I was wondering how you did it and whether you have some advice to give to anybody who's purchasing the equipment, what to avoid and what to prefer.
Well, with Condor, they have ways that you can change the amount of response you get from the movement of the pedal or the stick. And in the Condor 2 that I had been flying in Condor 3, I leave the stick completely alone, and that might be different with other sticks. But with this stick, it's perfectly happy with the native graph. With the rudders, I've always found them to be too sensitive, and so I have the initial movement of the rudder dumbed down substantially. So you have to move the rudder more. If you leave it with their original setup, it's way too sensitive. And so I have that dumbed down, but that's all I've had to do. So, yes. Yeah, and I don't think I've mentioned how much more I like Condor 3 than I like Condor 2. I like Condor 2 plenty, but there were things that it did that bothered me, like the ASK-21 that we usually use for training. You'd be running along the ground behind the tow plane, and sometimes you'd have to give it a little back to get it off the ground, and then all of a sudden it would balloon. So I've coached hundreds of people, be ready to do this with the stick. And that's a bad thing to teach people. You don't want to leave the ground and do that with the stick. Condor 3 doesn't do that. It now tows great. Well, they've changed the models because the other thing it doesn't do, which always irritated me, is that it was like there was no inertia in yaw. And so, if you had a little bit of turbulence dialed in, it'd sit there and do this. Well, I'm sorry, gliders have inertia in all axes. And gee, the nose wobble is gone in Condor 3, at least on the 21, because I've been concentrating on how it's going to affect instruction, not necessarily. I haven't looked at cross country yet. I came back from a meeting yesterday, and I'd left it turned on because I'm so confident that it's robust and can't be broken. And there were 8 people in line as I left for the meeting, and normally I would turn it off. And normally I've been taking the mouse and the keyboard and putting it in my briefcase so it's really off and nobody can mess with it. 8 guys in line, all looking anxious to fly it, and I go, okay, you're going to break it? Oh, no, we won't break it. You got to promise me you won't break it. They all promised. I left it running, came back, 45 minutes later. There it was running still with 2 new guys in it. So, it is a robust simulator that with a little care apparently can't be broken. So, and the other thing that is on my notes, and I wasn't working off my notes, and I really have to give credit to Scott Manley for all the work he's done. And he's been doing it for decades. And he absolutely insists that you don't need that kind of simulator to make it work. And I'm here to tell you that in a club environment, I think this kind of simulator makes a huge difference. I know people that have worked with Scott to the point, one of my friends in Texas wanted to join the TSA. They didn't have enough instructors. They told him to go to a commercial operation. He starts with Scott, joystick on the desk. Scott works through it with him. And guy says, okay, am I ready to go to a commercial operation? Scott says, yeah, you're ready. Don't tell him you've been involved with Condor. He didn't tell him. He went incognito. They were flabbergasted at how good he was his first flight. And there are many stories like that that I don't have time to tell you because we've already gone past our time limit. I'm trying to get hands that I've seen before.
I'm going to be really brief, but I just wanted to say, if you haven't heard of it, Scott Manley has an upcoming session of Softy, and it's free of charge. It's an online course. It takes about 15 weeks, an hour every Wednesday is what it was last year. It is, if you have no Condor experience, this is a great starting point. I'm sorry to contradict Don, but you really don't need a fancy simulator setup to get involved in this. And Scott's an incredible teacher. It's simulated online flight training experience. I did not want to do it. I only did it because my club president wanted someone in the club to take it, and it's been invaluable for myself and every student that comes into our club. So highly recommend it. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, just one comment about simulators. If there's more than 1/10 of a second delay from when you make input till the display shows it, then that's going to cause PIOs and stuff. So, comment over here, you want to make sure that you really have a good fast graphics card so that there's not that delay.
Hi, so I'm from Kansas Soaring Association, and we took advantage of the grant and got our simulator set up. The two struggles that we still have with it are just getting instructors and other members who are experienced pilots trained themselves in how best to use it. So a resource I'd love to see from the SSA or from Scott or from somebody going forward is training specifically for CFIGs and people who can come in and help instruct new students how best to utilize the resource. We're talking a lot about how to create the resource, but we need to talk more about how to use the resource. And then the other struggle we have is just, it's a computer, so it has periodic updates, and sometimes you turn it on and the screens are flipped around the wrong way and stuff. And that's been a frustration for us. So anybody who has more computer experience and can help clubs, at least especially mine, set up the computer and give best practices and how to set up the computer so it is just dummy proof. You can turn it on and it's not going to have a bunch of updates to go through, and it'll just work. That would be great.
Okay, to that end, as far as having resources to talk to, there is a brand spanking new SSA resource committee where Rick Hoffman is going to be in charge of finding resource people. I won't call them experts because he's enlisted me as one of the people. And so I'm going to be the guy listed. And at some point, if somebody doesn't know how to get a hold of me, they're going to get in touch with the SSA. They will put you in touch with the resource committee, or they will take your information. The resource committee will call me and say, hey, talk to this person about simulators. And although I'm a Luddite when it comes to computers, I'm pretty good at making computers work with Condor. So at the moment, if you grab one of those things, you'll find my email address and you can call me, and telephone usually works better. So on your first email contact, I would probably call you back because I like telephones